Hi guys, today we are going to dive into the immune system. So remember that for the AP curriculum, we're going to focus most on the body systems that help regulate homeostasis and help communicate. Those are kind of our two focuses in our curriculum is cells communicating and organisms communicating, and then also how we maintain homeostasis. So the immune system plays a very large role in the maintenance of homeostasis, and it can be very different. Every living thing does have some type of immune system, even if it's a cell wall. Technically, a cell wall will prevent viral infection or at least slow down bacterial or other parasitic infection. But all the way up to us as mammals having very, very complex and adaptive immune systems. So, in this unit, we are going to talk about innate immunity or immunity that you were born with, and then the adaptive immunity that we see in higher animals. We're also going to relate back to this idea about cell to cell communication and how all of that kind of is wrapped up into one thing. So, here we have kind of an overview of our immune system. We're going to focus a lot on humans or mammals, but don't forget that even plants technically have immune systems. Amoebas have immune systems. Every living thing has at least some way to defend itself against pathogens or parasites. So whatever that looks like, that helps avoid infections, and that really is the primary goal, is to never get sick in the first place. But when you do, it helps to remedy or fix those infections and get you back to homeostasis. So anything that can cause a disease can be classified as a pathogen. Most often for humans, it's going to be viruses or bacteria, but we also do have some very common eukaryotic pathogens, like the protist that causes malaria. Because it's a protist, it has a cell or it has a nucleus, and so it actually is a protist and not a virus or a bacteria. As I mentioned in the previous slide, every single organism from amoeba to spider plant to human is born or created or hatched with innate immunity, and that is present at birth. It could be something as simple as your the tears in your eyes or the lining of your respiratory tract, and of course your skin. Your skin is a fabulous physical barrier that keeps what's out and keeps what's in. And that is the number one way to protect your body from viral or bacterial infection. Vertebrates also do have adaptive immunity, which is the left side of our image here. So that is mostly the white blood cells found in our bloodstream. There are white blood cells that take up housing in a lot of organs, like your lymph nodes, your spleen, even your lungs, your intestines are full of white blood cells that will constantly be monitoring and attacking pathogens and parasites. And another feature of that adaptive immune system is it is specific. So each different virus or bacteria will trigger the production of a different type of white blood cell. And we'll talk more about that as the unit goes on. This is a great flow chart that would be a fabulous reference point if you did not take anatomy or are a little rusty on how immunity works. Remember that there's really three levels of immunity. That first one is the prevention of infections with skin, mucous membranes, and secretions like tears. If we bypass those, then the internal infection or the internal defenses that are still nonspecific, like some types of phagocytes, the natural killer cells, proteins, or just inflammation, that redness and pain associated if you get like a splinter, or even fever is technically body-wide inflammation. All of those are technically still innate immunity because they're not triggered by a specific pathogen. They treat all pathogens the same. If those two defenses fail, that is when the humoral or cell-mediated response of the adaptive immunity is going to kick into gear. So we'll come back to this at the end of our notes after we've talked about all these terms and kind of reviewed how they work. Just keep in mind that pathogens, in order to make you sick, have to bypass three layers of security. They do work together, but oftentimes we never get past that first layer, which is great because you're around all these viruses and bacteria all the time. So today we're just going to talk about innate immunity. So innate immunity is found in all plants and animals, and it is the first line of defense against any type of pathogen, usually a virus or a bacteria. So the most basic level of innate immunity that every single living thing has is a barrier, some type of physical structure that separates the body of the organism from the external environment, and that includes the pathogens that might be surrounding them all the time. Our barriers are our external skin, but we also do have barriers between our mucous membranes and our bloodstream. So if we think about the video we watch about digestive system in anatomy is really funny. He describes our gastrointestinal tract, so that continuous tube that begins in your mouth and ends in the anus, as a continuous tube of outside that runs right through the middle of you. And he continues to say that you're a donut. Okay, so if you imagine your GI tract or your respiratory tract as being the whole of the donut, it's not technically inside of you because it's still in that space that's in the middle of you. And the actual bread part of the donut is your tissues and organ systems. We have lining on the outside of that donut, and we also have lining around the whole of that donut. And those inner linings are generally mucous membranes. So anywhere that you're constantly exposing your body, that inner membrane to the outside world, there's going to be mucus there because it helps. It's part of our adaptive or innate immune system. So that includes respiratory, urinary, reproductive, and of course digestive tracts as well. The mucus is really important because it traps and removes microorganisms. When you're coughing things up or sneezing them out, that's your body's way of trying to get rid of it. And of course, we also secrete a lot of fluids from these membranes. Saliva, tears, and the mucus itself is chemically hostile, so it doesn't allow for the growth of bacteria in those. Usually, we know we all have had bronchitis or tonsillitis or something from time to time. When your body is healthy, it will not allow bacteria to grow there. Your skin actually has a very low pH compared to what bacteria prefer. And of course, your digestive system, especially the acid in your stomach, will prevent the growth of many bacteria because the inside of your body would be a very nice place for bacteria to grow. It's warm, there's plenty of nutrients, there's plenty of water. So the body has to constantly be actively fighting against pathogens. One of the best non-specific parts of your immune system are called phagocytes. The word phagocyte means eating cell. So they go around in your organs or around the bloodstream and gobble up, engulf any foreign material that they come across. So it could be, in this case, it's a yeast cell. Yeast can cause things like thrush or all kinds of yeast infections wherever they may be. So here you can see the phagocyte is kind of surrounding it and engulfing it. So they come in lots of different forms and names. We don't have to learn the difference between them. But for mammals, most of them are white blood cells. So neutrophils, macrophages, that means big eater. There's that phago again. Dendritic cells are named because they kind of have these branch-like appendages, almost like a neuron. And then eosinophils and natural killer cells are a really important part of this group as well. The other main component of your nonspecific response, besides your barriers and your phagocytes, is inflammation. So nobody likes inflammation because it is an indicator that something's not right in your body. It could indicate damage, it could indicate infection. It's not pleasant, but the whole point of inflammation is to increase the blood flow, to enhance pain, and to get that damaged or diseased tissue the resources it needs to heal itself and to correct that infection. So mast cells are the cells located in skin and mucous membranes that when they are damaged, they release this chemical called histamine. If you've heard of Benadryl or Claritin, they're antihistamines because their job is to prevent the inflammation that comes with like allergies. So they're going to block this histamine from being effective and turn down the inflammation that we sometimes see as itchy, watery eyes or runny nose or that kind of thing. But histamine in a real inflammatory response is going to trigger blood vessels to dilate, which means they get bigger. Their walls also get more porous or permeable so that materials can accumulate at these sites of injury. Also, as those capillaries become more permeable, they allow all of those macrophages and other phagocytic cells to collect in that area. They are also going to release chemicals called cytokines, which tell the white blood cells to come. It's kind of like the bat signal for white blood cells. They're like, oh, we need you, come here. So inflammation is generally local, like the swelling of your eyes if you are cutting onions or something, or you're allergic to pollen. Or if you roll your ankle, you can clearly see that this left foot is very inflamed. I guess it'd be the right foot No, that'd be the left foot compared to the right foot here. Lots of collection of blood and fluid in that area. Or it can be body-wide inflammation. Some things like arthritis or again having a fever is indicative of a body-wide inflammatory response, and that's just showing that the immune system is having a difficult time fighting off whatever it is. In the case of arthritis, it's actually autoimmune sometimes. Sometimes it's due to the breakdown of the synovial membranes that allow cushion between bones, and as those bones rub, it causes that inflammation because they're getting damaged. But sometimes it can be caused by your own immune system attacking your joints. So arthritis is kind of a catch-all for inflammation of the joints, but it can have several causes. Okay, so let's go through step by step what happens when we have tissue damage. So obviously our splinter is going to bust right through those barriers. It's already activating our white blood cells here, and that is not enough. There's still all these little green bacteria that are trying to get into our bloodstream. So to prevent that from happening, the next step is that macrophage releasing all these signaling molecules. Notice how the blood vessel gets wider, and also the little gaps between cells get wider as well. And that allows these amoeba-like white blood cells to really squeeze through. So they're all going to accumulate in this tissue, gobble up those bacteria, and continue to send more signals to make sure that infection never occurs. So it still hurts, it's still red, and it's still a little swollen for a few days. But as that skin heals itself, the white blood cells continue to prevent those pathogens from ever getting into the bloodstream, because that's when it gets dangerous, is when it gets into the bloodstream. After the initial inflammation has passed, notice the blood vessel goes back to its normal orientation. Okay, so that is as far as we are going to go today. Your assignment for the rest of the day is going to be to finish up the POGL that we started yesterday, that feedback POGL, and make sure that your Chapter 32 AR is done. I will check that when we get back. So no need to submit it on Schoology unless you really want to. I will check those tomorrow when I'm back with you all. Feel free to email me or send me a reminder if you have any questions, and we'll see you tomorrow.